Weeks of heavy rains and floods have affected 5 million people in 19 countries across West and Central Africa. Forecasts suggest above average rainfall will continue through October in many parts of the region. And who can forget the vagaries of droughts that have plagued the East and Horn of Africa? The numbers are staggering and the effects devastating. We are living in the era of climate change that has created a vicious cycle of food insecurity and increasing reliance on imports. But how can Africa emerge from this disaster? That's our focus on World of Africa with me, Erik Njoka. Welcome to the show. The two chambers of Ethiopia's federal legislature, the House of People's Representatives and the House of Federation, held joint opening ceremony for the 2015 Ethiopian calendar fiscal year. The President of Ethiopia, Sahle-Work Zewde, addressed members of the two houses. During the opening remarks, she said efforts should be heightened into getting the war to end in peace. General Mahamat Idris Deby will lead a 2-year-long transition before democratic elections and has promised to quickly appoint a government of national unity, 18 months after taking power at the head of a military junta. This second phase of the transition will be devoted to the implementation of the conclusions of the inclusive and sovereign national dialogue. Deby said after being presented with the badge of dignity or the Great Cross of Chad, a symbol of Chadian power. Global miners operating in Zimbabwe will have to pay some of their royalties in refined metal rather than cash, the country's president wrote in a newspaper as the country struggles to benefit from demand for its resources. Zimbabwe has abundant reserves of minerals such as gold and platinum, but power supply problems, a lack of ancillary industries to support mining, and currency fluctuations have prevented it from profiting from a resource boom. 2022 has witnessed immense climate impacts around the world. Next month, world leaders will gather in Egypt for the United Nations Climate Summit known as COP27. Climate finance is expected to be high on the agenda. Time is running out to save the climate from the point of no return. Will the next COP meeting spur world leaders into action? This week, we highlight the vagaries of global warming on the continent.
The heavens opened up in West Africa. The much-anticipated rainy season was finally here, and it poured. Kogi State bore the brunt of the rains. Hundreds of homes were destroyed, thousands were left homeless, and roads were inaccessible after the worst flooding in a decade. 56-year-old Emmanuel Ajoru, Gaduma community resident, lost his home in the floods. It's the second time since 2012.
It's a serious situation. Only God will come to somebody's aid now. If not, I don't know. My mind now is discouraged and I'm off life, as I can say.
Thousands of miles away in the north, Sudan was covered in a sea of water. This is Mammal in Sudan's River Nile state, some 400 kilometers north of the capital Khartoum. People recovered their belongings after floods caused by torrential rains killed at least 52 people and damaged or destroyed thousands of homes.
The floods were very heavy and instantly filled the streets of the neighborhood, and then the alleys and into houses. Yards, rooms inside houses, balconies, kitchens and storage rooms. The water was heavy and running. Only a few managed to save their furniture.
Since the start of the devastating rainy season, thousands of Sudanese families have been left homeless, sheltering under tattered sacking.
Autumn has just started and people are worried that there will be more rains and there is no place to stay. Not all families have tents or shelters, and we are worried. And we are worried for the children's safety, as there are scorpions and snakes. People are worried about what the heavy rain could bring with it.
From the drenching north to the continent's drying plains of East and the Horn of Africa, at least 20 million people are affected by drought, with reduced access to nutrition, safe drinking water, education, health and protection. Of that, almost 900,000 children require treatment for severe and moderate acute malnutrition. The United Nations warned that Somalia, as well as Kenya's arid northern regions, are on the brink of famine for the second time in just over a decade.
This drought is different because it has been the longest. Our goats have died. People too have died of hunger. We no longer get development here nowadays, we just survive. There's even no water, no food.
From the blistering desert of Morocco to the south of the continent, lifestyle has become impossible to sustain as climate change brings ever more intense suffering. Kinshasa, Congo, climate representatives from more than 40 countries converged for the pre-COP27 conference, where they asked those gathered how Africa should contend with the dilemma of being responsible for only 4% of greenhouse gas emissions while having to make tough decisions to pursue green energy alternatives.
J'ose espérer que les échanges s'étendront.
I hope that the discussions will include the cases of the leading forces, the result of which has been some European countries returning to the use of polluting energy sources they had previously banned in order to avoid the incalculable consequences of an energy deficit imposed on them by the war in Ukraine.
Les conséquences incalculables d'un déficit en énergie.
Rich nations previously pledged to spend $100 billion a year on aid to poor nations to help them adapt to climate change and develop cleaner energy systems. Even those pledges, however, especially from the United States, have not been fulfilled.
Failure to act on loss and damage will lead to more loss of trust and more climate damage. This is a moral imperative that cannot be ignored, and COP27 must be the place for action on loss and damage.
Thousands of people will continue to die, especially in the most neglected continent in the world, if inaction persists. Climate catastrophe is real, and it's affecting Africa more than you can fathom. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
Millionaire Sam Matekane, who made his fortune in the diamond mines and is reputed to be the richest man in Lesotho, has led the Revolution for Prosperity, or RFP, to victory in the general elections, although the party does not hold a majority. Here's a look at why the polls in one of Africa's tiniest nations was crucial and a game changer.
Friday the 7th was a big day in the southern African kingdom of Lesotho. Voters cast their ballots as polling stations opened for this parliamentary elections. Early in the morning, Lesotho people turned out to vote with the hope that a new party will take the lead in tackling high youth unemployment, crime and corruption.
I'm hoping for a changed Lesotho, I'd say. Yeah, bottom line.
I'm a youth and there's a lot of high employment. And we've been praying and crying, and I hope the government that's going to take party now is going to hear our pleas.
Some voters walked for kilometers or queued up for hours to reach polling booths set up at schools or sometimes under marquees on the grass. Hopes are low that the outcome will end Lesotho's long-running political gridlock. The country has been governed for the past decade by a string of coalition governments that have proved fractious and frail. And no premier has served out a full 5-year term.
For me, I just feel that it's a waste of time, because during that time, I could be doing much better rather than going to vote and helping people to position. And then after that, they do nothing for us in our country. When you look around, a lot of people are unemployed, but they are there running for politics non-stop. To tell you the truth, I have never voted and I won't, and not willing to vote.
Most definitely we have a problem of unemployment. It's very serious. We have corruption. our economy is down, so we are hoping that the new government that's going to come is going to make sure that our economy improves so that a lot of youth that is unemployed gets to be employed, whether they're able to create their jobs on their own, anything that can bring hope to the youth.
According to the final results, the new kid on the block, the Revolution for the Prosperity Party formed by Sam Mead-King, only in March won 56 out of 120 seats in the parliament. Even though the results are impressive for the new party, it will now have to secure the support of smaller parties to form a coalition government. The Democratic Congress, the main opposition party and member of the coalition government, came second, securing 29 seats.
A victory for the RFP paves the way for a change in government, but this will not necessarily end the long-standing political instability in a southern African country marred by political upheaval, stalled reforms under the previous government, and widespread exasperation of people over political wrangling, corruption, and policy paralysis. This is Kalden Olmo from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
Unintended pregnancy is common among women of reproductive age in Nigeria, and a substantial number end in abortion. Many of these abortions are unsafe, and some result in serious maternal morbidity or even death. The main reason for this is that termination is only allowed legally in Nigeria if a woman's life is in danger. This drives women to obtain abortions through unqualified providers using inappropriate methods. Why is this vice prevalent in the West African nation? Let's find out in this next report.
Unwanted pregnancy is common among women of reproductive age in Nigeria. Experts say poor knowledge of the use of contraceptives contributes to this rising problem. Of the 121 million cases of unwanted pregnancies recorded yearly worldwide, Nigeria accounts for 2.5 million of them. Annually, between 2015 and 2019, almost 3 million pregnancies were unintended. 48% ended in abortion. Many of these abortions are unsafe, and some result in serious maternal morbidity or death, as Nigeria's stringent abortion laws allow termination only if woman's life is in danger. This has led women to seek illegal ways of getting rid of pregnancies, from patronizing quacks to purchasing drugs and medication for the treatment of ulcer over the counter.
If you have young people understand what sex is, understand what safe or safer sex is, understand how to, take care of themselves in a sexual manner, how to prevent themselves from getting pregnant in the first place, how to prevent themselves from getting sexually transmitted infections. It gives a more informed decision in such a way that both parties that are involved are aware of ways to prevent themselves into getting into this situations.
In a country at risk of population explosion, there's an urgent need to address the growing concern of unintended pregnancies, and health practitioners in Nigeria believe the most trusted way is for the government to publicize the use of contraceptives and to take family planning conversations more seriously.
It's quite common, and because of the regulations around it in the country, it makes a lot of unsafe abortion happen because people want to hide.
Especially young women who are not married, and there's a need for them to do abortion because they're not ready to have children at that particular point in their lives. So they feel like having children at that point in their lives would halt their future prospects.
Will the person need to limit family size as a result of the harsh economic realities, to the unavailability or poor knowledge of the use of contraceptives, and more? Women and girls in Nigeria have resorted to self-help in dealing with unwanted pregnancies. What is the future? From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi, WION World is One.
Morocco, the world's top producer of hashish, according to the United Nations, lies on Europe's doorstep and is potentially well placed to become a top legitimate exporter. Growers now hope that a change in the law last year will help them profit legally from medicinal cannabis, increasingly used to treat conditions including epilepsy. Here's a report from Ketama.
This is the village of Azila in Morocco's Ketama region. Vast cannabis fields are ready for harvest, but there's a problem. Farmers have been complaining that a government plan to market the crop legally is yet to deliver them any benefits. The marginalized Rif region has long been a major source of illicit hashish smuggled to Europe, while Moroccan authorities, wary of social unrest, have often turned a blind eye. But a domestic crackdown on growers, slow progress in issuing licenses for legal production, and strong competition from European operators has left Rif farmers out in the cold.
We put an emphasis on the development of the region, whether roads or tourism, to create extra revenue for villagers. Cannabis as a crop doesn't produce a lot today because of the scarcity of water. The production is very low.
A Moroccan state agency formed in July has now issued the first 10 permits for the use of cannabis in industry and medicine and for export. All this is a result of a law passed last year.
Currently, the situation in the region here is complicated because all residents are experiencing a real economic crisis since the state is still fighting the illegal drug trade and has blocked all routes to Europe. Supply is greater than demand, and in addition to that, there's a real crisis in the so-called traditional cannabis areas, and farmers are waiting impatiently for legalization, hoping that it could open the economy for us, which would benefit them.
Cannabis is already widely cultivated in Morocco illegally, and the new law, passed by Parliament last year, does not permit its use for recreation. The law is intended to improve farmers' incomes and protect them from drug traffickers who control the cannabis trade and export it illegally to Europe.
We are convinced that legalization is in our interest and we support it. People will at least be able to live in peace without fear of prosecution. Regarding cannabis, I can tell you that here there are 60 to 70% of people who have been prosecuted because of cannabis. So we are in favor of its legalization, so people can live freely and without the risk of getting arrested.
Cannabis farms covered 55,000 hectares, that's around 136,000 acres, in the northeast of the kingdom in 2019. They provided livelihoods for up to 120,000 families, according to a study conducted before the law was passed. Civil society groups in the area are mobilizing to inform farmers about the technical aspects of the new system. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma has completed his 15-month prison sentence that was handed down to him last year by the Constitutional Court. Even though the former president only physically stayed behind bars for 2 months, this still comes as a huge relief to him. Our reporter Kalden Omu reports.
Firecrackers, popping champagne, singing and dancing. This was the mood at former President Jacob Zuma's house in Nkandla as his 15 months prison sentence came to an end. The 80-year-old celebrated the night away with his family. On Friday, Correctional Services announced that Zuma has been released from the department's system and his 15-month sentence expired on 7th of October. The statement from the department read, Zuma complied with his conditions for medical parole as set out during his placement. All administrative processes have now been concluded and the sentence expiry date marks the end of him serving his sentence under community corrections. The Constitutional Court sentenced Zuma to 15 months imprisonment on June 29, 2021 for contempt of court. However, after spending 2 months at Escort Correctional Center in KwaZulu-Natal province, he was released on medical parole in September. The former president still believes his imprisonment was unfair and that he was incarcerated without a trial.
From now onwards, His Excellency President Zuma is a free man. He can participate in anything that he wants to participate in from A to Z. So indeed, we are looking forward to a jovial His Excellency President Zuma. The people out there have been yearning for his voice and all of that. So we are just saying to the people of South Africa, indeed, Malala is back.
Now that he's a free man, all eyes are going to be on him. Few days back, Zuma released a statement confirming that should he be requested to contest for a leadership position, he will not refuse. He even announced that he will once again be backing Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma for ANC president position, who is competing with the current sitting president, Cyril Ramaphosa. Hate him or love him, but you cannot ignore him. This is one of the most popular phrases that is used to describe Zuma. He is popular, yet very controversial. But the 80-year-old still manages to somehow charm his people.
I think that Jacob Zuma is not likely to get or become the chairman again of the ANC, but I do think that he's likely to be seen in KZN because he is popular in KZN, and I suspect that the ANC will bring him out during the election campaign, but I don't know how successful that campaign will be.
Experts have said only the ANC is capable of destroying itself, and they are doing quite a good job at it. It will be interesting to see if Zuma will be actively on the ground, or will he agree with Ramaphosa, where he recently stated that at 80 years, Zuma should focus being an elder and giving advice to the ANC and not think of contesting. This is Kalden Ongmo from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
The National Museums of Kenya launched an app to help the country's wildlife authorities track and even log rare and common mammals and record whether the species and their habitat are thriving. The phone app allows users to contribute what animals they see and where they were spotted. Here now is a report from Nakuru, Kenya.
Take a safari across the Kenyan bush and you will spot areas teeming with animals. Kenya is rich in biodiversity. The Kenyan Wildlife Service, KWS, says around 25,000 species of animals and 7,000 species of plants have so far been recorded. But assessing the health of the animals and their habitats is a big task. People concerned with animal welfare want to know more than just where the animals are located. They want to know the condition the animals are in and whether their habitat can support them. Now, there is a free mobile phone app which allows users to record all the details of any mammals they spot.
This app now helps us to really map where these animals are, and if they're in trouble, we can get the authorities to come and help us. And it gives me a great opportunity to show the tourists exactly where they are. And when you're on foot, it's actually sometimes more difficult to find some of the animals because they spread out far and wide.
The free app means all Kenyans can become citizen scientists and support the wildlife authorities as they in turn care for the welfare of the animals. The app is called Mammal Atlas Kenya, which is shortened to MeKenya. When someone sees a mammal, they take a photo and post it on the app, giving details of the mammal's age, species, habitat.
We want also to encourage the general public to participate in conserving mammals. And one of the basic ways they can actually do that is whenever they see mammal anywhere, they submit a record. That way is one of the most important way of them even participating in conserving mammals. This information can also be used in future if we want to predict where animals will be in future, because we will look at the type of habitat where they are at the moment, and maybe we'll ask ourselves 50 years to come from now, what will have happened to their habitat and their numbers.
Wildlife services argue it's hard to keep track of the animals because they are spread so far and wide. Also, there aren't enough experts in Kenya to cover all areas.
It will also include recording the breeding condition. Specifically, if you see an endangered species and you see that it has young ones, that is quite encouraging because we know that that species is actually will survive in the environment. Number two, again, it will be a game changer because it will also capture the habitat type where that species is found. If the habitat is in good condition, then we know that the endangered species will survive in that particular habitat in long run.
Drought across parts of Kenya has seriously threatened species like rhinos, elephants and lions, as it has reduced the amount of food available. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
And that's it on this week's episode of World of Africa. You can watch the show on all our social media platforms and remember to interact with us there. I'm Erik Njoka and this is WION World is One. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye.